Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Sarastro's Kingdom Death Monster painting series. In this video I'll be painting the ultimate Showdown board for Madame Poot's Kingdom Death Monster. The board is made up of 6 frames of tiles that slot together. My plan is to use the airbrush to establish the ambience for the stonework along with a broad vignette effect before painting the various details on the board by hand with the aim of creating visual interest without pulling too much attention from what should be the primary focus, which is of course the miniatures. Let's begin. In the box we find a large number of bags containing the 352 individual tiles that make up the board. And here on the Kingdom Death Shop website we can see how the tiles, which are numbered on the back, are supposed to be arranged within the 6 frames. I'm first dry fitting the tiles into place to ensure I've got everything arranged correctly. It's then up to you to decide whether you want to glue them down or not. If you're planning on buying the official terrain that's coming to the game, you won't want to glue these down as the terrain is designed to be swapped out with these tiles as necessary. I'm not planning to get the official terrain however, so chose to glue them into place to prevent them from popping out whilst painting or setting up the game. After priming the board black with a rattle can, I'm now just masking the sides to keep them paint free whilst I work. I'm now going to airbrush the stonework, firstly using a mix of black and dark grey blue. I'm thinning the paint with water along with a little flow enhancer to help prevent blockages. With each frame I'm going to apply the paint from the same angle, from roughly 10 or 11 o'clock, to ensure that the light and shadow remains consistent across the board. I'm now colouring the first tile, coming in at a roughly 45-degree angle to give pretty good coverage but leaving some darker blacks in the shadows. This is the Iwata Revolution CR airbrush with a decent sized 0.5mm nozzle. A couple of layers of this should give us adequate coverage before moving on to the next tile. I'm now going to lighten the mix with increasing amounts of bright warm grey and some golden brown. I chose the light warm grey to simply lighten the values, and the golden brown to provide some colour modulation, resulting in a duck egg green colour by the time we get to the brighter highlights. I'm now coming in at a slightly lower angle and we're beginning to see more of the relief. My plan is to build up a macro vignette, mirroring the original board, so we'll be pushing the values a lot higher at the centre and gradually receding into the gloom around the edges. Along the way it's important to check that the values match up nicely from one frame to the next. I'm now going lighter still in a few more stages, this time starting with the central stone faces, then tapering the values out as we move further away. You can see me pulling the airbrush back as we transition into the more shadowed areas. Eventually I decided it would be easiest to work on the floor for the last few stages. This is my brightest tone, which I'm reserving for the central stone faces. With that done, we can now paint the various details on the board, and I'm starting with the foliage. For that, I'm using a base tone mix of dark golden brown mixed with some of the black and dark grey blue to help the plants fit the overall ambience. This is the most time-consuming part of the process, as there aren't really any shortcuts we can take here. I'm now going to add some highlights and colour modulation. For some of the plants I'll be leaning into some green tones, although I don't want them to look too healthy. And for other parts I'll be exploring a range of more autumnal colours, and anything in between. I'm starting with some greenish tones. For some of these highlights, a gentle bit of overbrushing can help speed things along a little. I'm now applying some more reddish autumnal tones, and we'll be creating some organic shifting of the colours as I go. I also want to match the levels of these highlights to that of the overall vignette, so we'll be pushing the highlights a lot more for the plants at the centre of the board. You can see I'm playing quite freely with some limited splashes of greater saturation here or there. With the foliage complete, we can now paint some of the other various details on the board, including the two little crab monsters, and I'm somewhat improvising with the colours here. As with the plants, I'm respecting the overall vignette, as we don't want any elements to jump out or look unnaturally bright. I'm pushing the highlights of this one quite a bit further, as he's in the more illuminated centre of the board. There are also several small skulls dotted around. And one or two broken blades, where I'm sketching on some quick non-metallic metal style highlights using both bluish grey tones along with some rusty oranges. The last main feature on the board is the various clusters of lanterns. To paint them, I'm using some oil paints thinned to a heavy wash consistency, but regular acrylic paints or even speed paints would also be fine for this. Here I'm just thinning some black along with some Prussian Blue and burnt umber in varying amounts. I first sprayed the board with a gloss varnish to help encourage the paints to flow into the recesses, although this isn't essential. As As well as painting the lanterns, I'm also providing some dark lining to the central stone face area. I'm now peeling off the masking tape and removing the gloss shine with some ultra matte varnish. And after tidying a couple of areas where I was sloppy with the oil paint, I'm going to provide some highlights to the lanterns with a bluish grayscale of black, white and Prussian blue. Just a few sharp highlights with the side of the brush tip on some of the raised edges is enough to create a glinting metallic look. Along the way, I also spotted a couple of details that I missed earlier, such as these bones. And here, an actual head and a ghoulish looking hand are hiding amongst the stone faces. Finally, I decided to return to the original stone gradient and push up the values for the eyes of the central faces to give them a little more presence. This brightest tone is a mix of the light warm grey along with a little of the grey blue and golden brown. After one final spray of the ultramatte varnish for protection, we're ready to play some Kingdom Death Monster. Thank you for joining me, I do hope you've enjoyed the episode. As usual, you can find links to some of the music composed for this series in the video description, along with product lists and links to all of the places I can be found online, such as Facebook and Instagram. My sincerest thanks as always go to my kind patrons for funding this series. If you'd like to help support my work, do please consider hitting the Patreon link and pledge what you can. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Kingdom Death Monster. Happy painting!